Okay, so I'm getting ready to go over adding a frame and adding drop shadows so that you can see. Let me get a little closer here so you can see what's happening so far. I've already added drop shadows to my type, and right now I've added a frame and I've added a drop shadow to my artwork just to add some more dimension. Looks as if the artwork is floating above the background, and I've added a little color behind the type. So what I'll do is I'm just going to undo everything, and then I'll redo everything so that you can see it. And anytime you're adding drop shadows, what happens is that your artwork becomes a little larger. So if you notice, like I'm undoing, you'll see a little window come up. That's because I have all the drop shadows. So anytime I resize something or add an effect to it, that Illustrator has to read every little thing that's going on with that particular piece, so then it can recalibrate and perform the task. And if you notice, I've done a lot of nudging around just to get things aligned. Take it all the way back. And take it back to the very beginning without the frame. Alright, so here we are. As far as the frame is concerned, the frame is simply a rectangle with no fill. Let me ungroup because I have it grouped. Alright, there's my frame. And you can change the size of your frame right now. Mine is at 2 points. Don't forget your control panel changes whenever you have a specific object selected. So right now this frame is simply a rectangle without a fill and a white stroke. And I simply bring it close to my artwork, and I'll align it horizontally at its center and vertically at its center. And so all of that's done. The next thing, I can add a drop shadow to it to add some dimension. Make it look as if it's floating above the background. Effects, stylize, drop shadow. And I'm just going to apply the same drop shadow that I have on the text. Then I press OK. Now if you notice, there's a drop shadow here inside of the artwork. And so it's important that you group your objects prior to adding an effect. So let me undo, select the objects, group, effects, stylize, drop shadow. I'm going to use the one I already have. Now if you notice, there's no shadow inside of the frame. It's just on the outside. Okay. The next thing, if you notice, my background is off the, could be a little larger. So I'll unlock the layer and I'll drag the rectangular box that's the background color, drag it over, and I'll lock it back. For the most part, the background should stay locked. The next thing I'm going to do is actually give myself a little more spacing here. It's getting a little tight. So I'm going to move these up. I'm holding my shift key as I slide these. If you notice, I selected more than one object without marking. And you can do that by selecting one object, holding down your shift key, and then click on the other objects that you want to include in the group that you're getting ready to move. And I use the word group lightly. You haven't grouped the objects, but you've selected more than one object to move at the same time. Then I'll move my artwork up, holding my shift key, keep it in place. And now I am going to, here's my color box in the background, and I'll delete it so that you can see what I did. I made a new layer above the background and right beneath some other things, and if I wanted to, I can bring this up here but under type. Choose what the box color I want. Make a rectangle which exists on the special elements layer underneath type. I can select both and align them horizontally, from their centers and vertically from their centers. I can also do some other things with special effects. I'm going to nudge this up just a tad bit, just to give a little bit room here at the bottom. So just selecting the color box, effects, stylize, and this time I'm going to do a feather. The feather just gives you some soft edges instead of a hard edge. And keeping it around 0.07 of an inch, it's pretty good. And so now, here are all my finished elements. So you're pretty much trying to get each one of your implied boxes to look complete. You have your background color, you have your box behind your type, you have your type with its drop shadow, you have your artwork inside of a frame. You added a frame to give a little more dimension. You also added a drop shadow to give more dimension in the whole piece. And you've aligned all of these horizontally from the centers and vertically from the centers. You've added lorem ipsum, which is just a false text. It doesn't say anything. You guys will come back later to actually put some writing in. You have your color box behind it just to illuminate the text and advance it forward. And so make sure that any color that you put in your background or behind your type doesn't conflict with the color of type that you've chosen. So like for instance, if I came in here and I had, let's just choose green. Very hard to see. But if I do a very dark green, then it's a little better. So you want to keep your type as bold as possible so that it's easy to read. So looking at your finished box, all of your boxes, implied boxes, I say that, all of your boxes should look like this. Nice and crisp, finished, and everything aligned.